1, 2. Welcome, everyone, to this funeral service for Mike Barish. We begin with the chanting of the 121st Psalm.
Esainai el harim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim va'aretz ayiten lamod raglecha ayanu Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha, Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, ve'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha me'ata me'ata ve'ad olam. Psalm 121. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, creator of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, and your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. And Adonai will guard your life, your going and your coming, now and forever.
Death has taken our beloved Michael Barish. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation, and the tears they have shed there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of so many loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Mike's love that united you in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that you shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For his brilliance. For his straight shooting. For his ability to see and cut through everything to get to the root. For his love of family. For all of the ways that he made life better for so many, and the gifts of his heart and mind that brought joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. And in this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scripture that brings us the ever new message of God's nearness, that tells of our kinship with the Creator in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. In the 15th Psalm, we read these words that could very well have been written about Mike Barish. The psalmist writes, Adonai mi yagur b'ohalecha mi yishkon b'har kodshecha. God, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless, but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others, who never take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. And in the words of the 23rd Psalm, these words that have brought so much comfort to so many over the centuries, words that speak of a journey that we are on as we walk through the valley of shadows, as we linger in the delights of the world. I'm going to ask Cantor Sachs to come and chant them for us. And then you have the text in the English if you received a handout. I'm going to ask that you join with me in the English following the Hebrew.
Adonai roi lo echsor binot asher yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yanaleni nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek yancheni v'maglei tzedek lemon shemo. Gam ki elech begitz amavet lo irara ki ata imadi shiftecha umishantecha hema yanachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai dishonta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai kol yemei chayai v'shavti bevei Adonai le'orach yamim. Adonai roi
Together. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. A few moments before we began this service, I asked Joy and her two sons to join me in a ritual called Kriya, tearing, where we tear a ribbon. And part of that ritual, we say the following words from the book of Job. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach Yishem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief in the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us. And yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. And so with Job we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given. You gave us Mike Barish, who will not be forgotten. And for all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. V'Adonai lakach, and God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and your love. As we now say, Yishem Adonai mevorach me'ata v'ad olam. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. I'm going to ask that we take just a few moments now of silent prayer as we remember Mike. We remember his brilliance, his friendship, his love. We pray in silence.
Iuleratson imrefi legioni lefanecha Adonai Suri Vegali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable
Friends, at this time, I want to invite Austin, Ava, Serena, and Lola to come on up and to share some thoughts about their grandfather.
It's difficult to put into words what our grandfather meant to the four of us, but we all wanted to do our best to share a few thoughts. In the last few days and weeks, I've done a lot of reflecting on my Grandpa Mike. Memories come to me of eating cheese and crackers on our couch at home, swimming in Palm Springs, and playing tic-tac-toe at lunch at Chili's. I think of him gifting me Porker, my favorite stuffed animal, and saying, "Take care, doll," every time we say goodbye. I think of him showing me how to let Ollie smell my hand, trying to copy his poker strategy, and sitting next to each other at our dinner table every time. I am so grateful for so many memories of him, and have been so lucky to have had him as such a large influence in my life. The memory that keeps coming back to me is a conversation we had when I was probably around 7 years old. At some soccer game that Grandpa Mike was attending, he told me to score a hat trick so he could be there for one, and that he would buy me a box of chocolate cigarettes if I did. I can't quite remember whether I got the hat trick or not, but the story stands out to me because it represents what I have always loved so much about my grandpa. He has always believed in me to achieve incredible things, and he has pushed me to be my best. His belief in me has given me so much confidence through the years and has enabled me to get to where I am. Beyond that, he shows me always that he is proud of what I do and who I am. Whether it's cheering at the sideline of my soccer game or reminding me how impressed he is with my grades in school, every time we are together, he makes me feel proud of myself. I'm so lucky to have had a grandfather who believes in me so much, and I will always continue to live my life in a way that I think would make him proud.
When I was younger and Grandpa Mike would occasionally drive me to dance class, he would always write his phone number on a sticky note, put it in my bag, and tell me to call him if I needed anything. Even when I insisted that I already had his number or that it was saved in my phone, he was careful to make sure I could always reach him. This is one of countless qualities that I admired in my grandpa, that he always showed how much he cared. Though often stoic in demeanor, he showed he cared through his actions. I saw this in the way he kept up with family members and old friends, and his presence at Camp Yard to guide my dad. I felt this when he called me to recommend TV programs he thought I would enjoy. When he brought over gadgets and souvenirs for our family, and when he forced me to try the shrimp at Benihana so I could learn to be more adventurous. I have always deeply valued his advice, knowing he shared his vast wisdom because he genuinely cared and wanted me to be the best version of myself. I will think of him with each new food I try, each card game I win, each Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream I enjoy, and each time I remember to take care of myself how he always encouraged me to. I hope someday everyone gets to experience the feeling of respect, hope, strength, capability, and genuine love and care that he gave to me.
When I think about my grandpa, there is so much to say about a person who held themselves with such admirable authenticity, sincerity, and principle. A moment that felt especially beautiful to me was telling him, a person whose intelligence I spent my whole life striving to emulate, where I had decided to go to college, knowing his reaction would be the one that would make me feel the proudest. He was the only person I could think to tell first. And now it is not his wit I would seek to emulate, but his ability to use it to care for others. I felt this constantly in his formal style of texting, his reminders to me to smile in pictures with my teeth, and in the way he listened and truly took joy in parts of my life. I think of my grandpa as being a very particular man, with quintessential lines about the prices of hamburgers and the too casual clothing that people wear on planes these days. But now more than anything, especially in our relationship recently, I think of my grandpa as someone with a rare capacity to make me feel more joy in my own life, knowing I could tell it to him. I know that I will miss that feeling, that I will miss talking to him. We will all be lucky if we take after him. So dearly, I will miss my Grandpa Mike. May his memory be for a blessing.
My grandfather was never particularly emotionally expressive. Rarely does his emotions extend beyond our routine handshake, met by a classic, "keep up the good work." There are 2 times in my mind that stick out in which I saw raw emotion break his typical calm demeanor. Both these times were just down the hallway when my sisters and I became benot and bar mitzvahs. I will never know exactly what he was thinking about in those moments that caused such an uncharacteristically outward reaction. I have often thought about it in the nearly 10 years since that day. However, it was clear to me then, as it is to me now, that he felt an immense pride and love for his family, and particularly his grandchildren, that I am confident extends to my younger cousins as well. His path to reach that audience was not easy and was one of incredible perseverance, and the 4 of us would not be here today without his unfailing fortitude. Whether it was on the phone or over pancakes or watching a football game, the wisdom he imparted on me through both his actions and words will stick with me for the rest of my life. It is our blessing to carry on his legacy. And we can only ask for an ounce of his strength in the journeys to come as we continue to try and make him proud. We all love you so much, Grandpa Mike. Thank you for everything, and may his memory be a blessing.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. That was quite beautiful. I want to share some words now from Brian. He writes, "Memories of Mike Barish, my father, after a long and successful life. My memories of my father are powerful and difficult to fully express in words. He was the most influential person in my life by a gigantic margin. Nobody else comes close. As a young man and his father, and well into his 60s, he was a physically imposing person, a big bear of a man at 6 foot 3 inches and a lean-ish 210 pounds most of his adult life. He was very often the largest man in the room, in a store, at weddings, or the largest dad on the sideline at sporting events. Despite his size, he considered his best sport to be bowling. Although he played basketball in high school, where he was a forward, he had a graceful hook shot. He never had physical encounters with other people and tended to be a bit formal with unfamiliar people. His personality was a unique combination of calmness, charisma, stoicism, confidence, and opinionatedness. And these characteristics don't usually abide in the same person, but did clearly in Mike Barish. He was born in New York City in 1939, the child of an immigrant father and mother who came to the United States as small children. He had a quick mind and skipped both the 2nd and 4th grade in elementary school. He was a freshman in college at age 16. Growing up in the Bronx as a child, he lost his mother at the age of 9. Mike and his older brother Carl thus had to fend for themselves for much of the day in the New York of the 1950s. This meant they played all manner of street games, such as stickball and hit the penny, became card sharks, pool sharks, horse track bettors, and baseball enthusiasts. My father's upbringing led to an unusually high street smarts, an acumen for calculating numbers and probabilities very quickly in his head, and a love of competition of all kinds. From my vantage point as a young person, this street-smart New York kid, now grown man / father / businessman in Denver, was the world's greatest realist. He did not emote rainbows and sunshine, nor doom and gloom, just ultra-realism, whatever that entailed. His mind was great for investments and great at cumulative games of luck, such as poker and backgammon, where skill and probabilities eventually prevail. He was competitively lethal at these kind of games. His family circumstances meant that he ate in restaurants most nights as a child, which led my father to become a gourmand at an unusually young age. Eating good or great food was a passion for his whole life. This included high-end cuisine, where he would judge restaurants on the quality of their beef Wellington or canellas? Canel? Okay. As well as more daily items such as pancakes and hamburgers. He had his standards, and they were very high. He decided to move west after graduating the University of Michigan in 1960. In part, this was to chase my mother, also a Michigan student who was a Denver native. But he had a plan B to follow his beloved New York Giants baseball team to San Francisco, where they had just moved, if Joy refused his interest. That thankfully did not happen. His business career and spectacular run as CIO of Cambiar Investors, the company he founded, are worthy of special mention. He never had a down year in 27 years of portfolio management. Through the inflationary 1970s, high interest rates, low interest rates, the occasional market euphorias and crashes, he seldom spoke of his streak and occasional market euphorias and crashes. He seldom spoke of his streak, but it's an almost impossible statistical run that he can lay claim to. Think of the Broncos winning 27 games in a row, to put that into some perspective. How preposterous would that be? It's a testament to just how smart, motivated, insightful he was, and that unique street-crafted ultra-realism that helped him see through corporate management's financial upheavals and all manner of events over the years. Some stories. My father had a great enjoyment of all forms of live entertainment, Broadway shows, live music, and live sporting events. I was his companion for mainly the sports ends of this, which meant innumerable Bronco games in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s before they were any good. And also when they were really good. He would tell me to focus not on the run or the pass, but on the action along the offensive line. Who was getting pushed in which direction? That's where the games were generally won. He would identify the winner of the battle in the trenches early in the game, and usually the ultimate winner. In 1989, his beloved San Francisco Giants finally made it to the World Series. He and his brother bought overpriced tickets and flew to the Bay Area to attend the first two games. As a student of the nearby University of California, Berkeley, he bought me a ticket as well. His excitement to finally attend a World Series game, he had never been to one, was visible. It was probably the most animated I ever saw him at a sporting event. However, this was the infamous earthquake series, where a magnitude 7 earthquake struck Northern California as the baseball teams were warming up before Game 1 of the series. The game and series were postponed as power went out all over the region, bridges fell, and various terrible stories began to filter in via radio. No internet or cell phone then. What were we supposed to do? As darkness began to fall, my father recognized that remaining at the stadium was a very bad idea. As the bridges were not passable to get back to Berkeley, we drove at his insistence to the top of Nob Hill, to the old Fairmount Hotel, which had survived the 1906 earthquake, and he figured would have survived this one as well. We hung out there for hours, and they fed us. Eventually, we drove off in the middle of the darkest night you could imagine. No power, no lights, no moon that night. and the stars obscured by fog, heading far to the north and back down the other side of the bay in utter darkness. His calm through this truly unique night was astonishing. Perhaps I should have felt panic and fear, but I felt none in his presence. And the plan that he winged out was perfect. In more recent years, he still traveled to investment conferences, mainly for small-cap companies that he continued to invest in. It had become a tradition in the 2010s for the conference sponsors to host Texas Hold'em poker tournaments as a form of entertainment. 70-plus-year-old Mike Barish won several of these. I have a great excess supply of the poker chip sets awarded for his frequent tournament wins, over as many as 200 contestants, and as many as over 200 contestants in my home to prove it. If you worked closely with my father, or spent much time with him, you would know that he was a very opinionated person. In business, in cuisine, as a sports fan, and politically. He had no qualms about voicing his opinions to those around him, independently of how they might be received. I was never sure whether he took pleasure in his blunt delivery or if he felt some unusual social obligation to unload on those around him from time to time. But you sure knew where he stood. Not everyone could endure this tendency of his, but I always found it to be a two-sided coin. On the one hand, his disappointment in some form of underachievement, poor service, poor analysis, or poor food was intense. On the other hand, what if somebody so sharp and apt to be critical this way believed in you unconditionally? What if this person was absolutely convinced of your intellect and path to achievement and success? What would that do for you? What would that make you do with your life? For my brother and myself, this was the fuel that propelled us forward. This man's absolute faith in our capabilities. You would have had to know him and spend time with him to truly understand the depth of this statement and what it meant for, of all the people in this world, that the great Mike Barish believed in you. Thank you, Brian. Dear Joy, dear Brian and Elise, dear Grant and Melissa, dear Austin, Ava, Serena, and Lola, dear family and friends all, those with us, those joining us online. As we know, as we have heard so beautifully, Mike Barish was a force of nature. He was an imposing presence wherever he was, both because of his physical stature as well as his brilliance and his determination to live life to the absolute fullest every day, all of the time. He was a connoisseur of life. He had exquisite taste in art, food, fashion, culture. He loved to ski. He loved travel. He loved learning and thrived on meeting challenges head on. And as we've heard so beautifully from his son, he had no patience for frivolity or excessive indulgences. He was a straight shooter and completely and sometimes bluntly honest. He was born on December 29th, 1939 in the Bronx, and his father, Albert, was an immigrant who became a highly successful businessman along with his brothers, who passed on his acumen to both Mike and his brother, Carl. As we heard from Brian's beautiful tribute to his father, Mike did not have an easy childhood. He learned from a very early age how to navigate and succeed in any environment. The tragic loss of his mother as a child and his father as a young man had a huge impact on his life, although he rarely allowed himself to reflect or dwell on it. His stoicism and determination to succeed stemmed in no small part from these difficult lessons early in life. After graduating from the University of Michigan, he served in the Coast Guard, and as we heard, he then set off to pursue the love of his life, Joy Day. Now, Mike and Joy had a wonderful marriage. The story that I heard is that he took a liking to you right away, Joy. You were unsure because you had a lot of other suitors. After summer break, when he first met you freshman year, you corresponded by mail. You went back to Denver. But despite all the other people who pursued you, you mostly dated Mike. Your parents were unsure. Who is this child of immigrants from New York? But you assured them that he was intelligent and that whatever he did would be great. He asked you to marry him not one, not two, but 3 times. After the 3rd time, he gave you an ultimatum. He proposed. He was driving that baby blue convertible. He reached in the trunk, brought out a box of flowers with the ring inside and said, "This is the last time I'm going to ask, but you'll never find a better suitor." And luckily you said yes. Yes, you did. You were married in a small wedding at Green Gables on June 11th, 1963, and you just celebrated your 60th wedding anniversary. They had a traditional marriage. He was the breadwinner, she was the homemaker. And as I said, he had excellent taste in everything, in a beautiful home filled with art, furnishings. He even admired the clothing you wear and told you what was the best. And even on his deathbed, he was so romantic and in love. You were each the love of each other's lives. And Joy, today you mourn, and we mourn with you. Through thick and sin, he was by your side. Through cancer, he was there before, during, and after. And you loved each other so deeply. He loved to travel. You said, "Okay, I'll go along." You'd rather stay at home, but you went. Brian, you were born in 1967, and then Grant in 1972. And he was so confident in his sons, as we heard. He didn't give out compliments lightly. And when he gave out praise, you knew he meant it. He was straight and to the point, and he was very proud of his sons' academic successes. He wanted you both to be happy. He said, "I want you to wake up enjoying what you're doing." And he provided his family with amazing experiences, traveling to Europe, cruises to Alaska, the Caribbean, to Russia, on the Orient Express to Hawaii. Brian, when you were 14, you took a trip to the Soviet Union, and that was not a good time to go to the Soviet Union. But Mike and Joy encouraged you to go. As a matter of fact, he joined you in a class in Russian, which he probably remembered it, but you didn't remember much of the Russian. You loved to ski. Joy, you grew up skiing, introduced Mike to it, and he came to love it. Both boys became great skiers, and Brian, you truly excelled. You went off on all the double black diamonds, and he just loved to watch you go. And the house in Vail was such a huge part of your life. The beautiful tributes we've heard from his grandchildren reflect how nothing made him happier than to be with the 4 of you and your cousins. He was interested in your lives. He remembered everything about you, and he loved to take you to the original Pancake House, the best restaurant in the world. Grant, your kids were younger. They lived in Chicago, and they didn't have the same type of relationship, but they still loved him, and he loved them. He was proud of their academic and mathematics achievements and loved to spend time in the house in Palm Springs. He loved being with them, playing board games and card games, and the older the kids got, the more he could relate to them. Lisa and Melissa. The father-in-law, he embraced both of you, and he was so proud of how his grandkids were being raised. He welcomed you into the family and loved you. He wasn't effusive, but you knew he was there for you. He loved your food, Elise, which was an amazing compliment because he could be very critical of food. He was passionate about sports, and this past year is when the Nuggets finally won the NBA championship. He was elated. And he loved his dogs. He had a variety of pets over the years, and none were more beloved than his Zoe, his dachshund, who was constantly by his side until the very end. I want to conclude with this poem by Maya Angelou. She writes, "When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly, we see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality bound to them takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die after a period, peace blooms slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whispered to us, they existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. For a life that was well lived, we bid shalom to Mike Barish, Michael ben Avraham V'Rivka. Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be for an eternal blessing. And let us all say, Amen. Take a few moments now for silent prayer. Into your care, O God, we entrust the spirit of Michael Barish. For you keep faith with your children in death as in life. Sustain us that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, God, are with us, a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our life, our hope in eternity. And with this assurance and trust, we rise now as we are able for the El Malay Rachamim.
El Malay Rachamim. Shochein bamromim hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina im kedoshim udarim kezohar harakia mazhirim et nishmat Michael ben Avram veRivka shehalach le'olamo Barachamim Yasireu beseiter kenafav le'olamim. וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Michael Barish, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. I've been asked to let you know that the family will be receiving Shiva and condolence calls at the home of Brian and Elise Barish, 75 South Forest Street in Denver, today following interment at Temple Emmanuel Cemetery until 3 o'clock p.m., and then this evening from 6 to 8 p.m., and Shiva will conclude Friday, tomorrow, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Jim?
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our service here at the synagogue. We will have interment at Emmanuel Cemetery. We will be traveling in an escorted procession, so if you'd like to join us for interment and the procession, we'll ask you to return to your cars as quickly as you can, and you're welcome to start lining up facing or using the southeast exit of the synagogue. We'll ask you to have your headlights on. Those who are not going to the cemetery, if we can ask you to please use the northeast exit, giving precedence or way to those who do want to line up for the escorted procession. We'll ask everyone to remain in your places as we escort the family and the casket out. If you happen to run into the family in the foyer or a restroom, please maybe refrain from expressing your condolences at that time. They do need to get themselves to the cemetery. We don't want to delay that process. I'll invite the pallbearers forward at this time.
Adonai ro'i lo echsar, inodesha yarbitzeni al memenuchot yenahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'ma'agle tzedek l'ma'an shemo. Gam ki elech begeit salmavet, lo irara ki atai madi. Shiftecha al mishantecha hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai, dishanta vashemen roshi, kosi revaya. אך טוב וחסד יודפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever.